Hi, everybody. Henry Ramos again from Studios on the Park, where I'm artistic director and chief curator. And so happy to have today two stellar artists and friends who are going to be featured with other artists we'll speak about in a minute at our June reopening at Studios on the Park. I've got Grady and Judy Johnson-Williams. Welcome, both of you, and thank you so much for making time for me.
Thank you, Henry.
Yeah, so we're going to talk obviously about the upcoming show in June, which is again our reopening after this long, very disturbing pause we've all been living through with COVID-19. And but I will want to get in depth, introducing you to our audience and telling them about your incredible works and what you've contributed to our show. But first, let me check in with you and just sort of see how you're respectively doing with this kind of very strange moment we're all living through. Peg, tell us a little bit about how you've been coping with COVID-19. How has it affected your point of view creatively and your work?
Um, Truthfully, it hasn't affected my life enormously. I mean, I'm an artist. I basically hang out and make stuff. And now I'm hanging out and making stuff. So, I mean,
Sounds
other
good.
than, of course, that whole thing of, what's going to happen. But if I can focus in on my art, I can kind of put that other stress away.
That's so important. So many of us resort to our art in some ways as a way of coping with very uncertain times. And it's great that you have the tool to do that. And it sounds like you've not missed a stride in your productivity. What
Oh,
about
I've
you?
mistried.
Uh, but it sounds like you're continuing to work, which is not true of all artists. Some of us are stuck. Some of us are struggling with the idea of how to cope with this new normal.
Yeah, it's up and down.
Judy, how are you contending with it? What's your kind of sort of story to tell us about how you're coping with the day?
Well, I'm at the opposite end. Traditionally, for me, art has been a lifeline, and I've immersed myself in it whenever I have problems. This time, it's totally different. I have multiple family members living with me of several generations. So,
Interesting.
what was my studio has now become a great room. I
Mm-hmm.
have my privacy. There's a lot of food to cook, people to take care of, and
Mm-hmm.
I find I'm just not motivated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm still keeping the sketchbooks, but I haven't really produced anything except under duress.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fair enough and understandable. We want to be compassionate with ourselves and with others in a time like this. And we all respond and react to crises or challenges in different ways. And we all have different presenting responsibilities that come with the moment. So you've got family and kids that you're taking care of there, and we get that. Um, well, that's another reason why we're all the more pleased and proud that you two have risen to the occasion to join two other important artists that we'll be speaking to in a subsequent discussion, Marcia Shaw and Corinne Lightweaver, in this important show that we'll be lifting up at Studios in June, which is our response in some ways to the COVID-19 moment. Reweaving Our Tattered Social Fabric is the title of the show. And in some measure, we wanted to feature you, artists, among the others that we'll be featuring because you're extremely strong women artists with a very kind of strong point of view. And much of the work that you'll be presenting is very, even though not planned for this moment, not a direct response to COVID, very apropos for the kind of mood that I think we're all struggling with in terms of how to be in this moment. So one of the things I wanted to kind of just trace through is, where you began in your artistic journey, and then we'll come full circle and talk about our show. So Peg, coming back to you, I know that you have deep roots in New York. You grew up in Queens, New York, had
I
the
do.
exposure as a young person to the whole New York City art scene, and you made your way out fairly early in your journey to California. Tell us a little bit about your incipient and informing experiences and what made you become an artist.
It's good. It's a good question. I don't know what made me become an artist. It didn't seem like there was a choice. Um, I always played around with materials, whether it was fabric or sculpture or paper mache, paint, obviously.
Wow.
Um, and it's just something I've always done in some form or another. It took a while before I went, oh, I can like actually do this and be this. But
Interesting.
it's just something I've always done
It's a part of who
from
you
the
are.
get-go. It's part of me. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's kind of, in a way, the definition of being an artist. It's you don't even have a moment in time that you became an artist. It's just kind of the way you came to the world,
I think
you
so.
know? And Judy, what about you? What was your informing or incipient kind of draw to the arts and culture as a form of your expression and identity?
So, like Peg, I've always done it, but for me, it was much more underground. I majored in chemistry and I did
Wow,
medical research for a while.
amazing.
And over time, the drawing and the artistic stuff took over and crowded out the scientific stuff. So
Mm,
by the time I was 40, I was willing to admit, okay, I guess I'm an artist. I'll have to claim it.
I love that story because in a sense you were, even though 40 is not that old, you were a late bloomer. You didn't come to it the way that maybe Peg did as a person, just kind of right out the chute.
I wasn't quite right out the chute. I was about 40 by the time
Oh, well,
I
tell us
can
more
do.
about that then. You're both people that started, your creative journey in a way a little bit later than some others.
Yeah, it wasn't like, let's go to art school when you're 25 or something. It
Hmm.
was like I had all kinds of different jobs. I had to earn a living.
Hmm.
And what happened with me is well, kind of like Judy said, you're doing these things and you finally realize, oh, this is what I am.
Hmm.
It's kind of like
Hmm.
comes in at you from sideways.
Fascinating.
And I had I was taking some classes and luckily stumbled upon a gentleman, Bob Burridge, who totally inspired me. I mean, now that was a click moment, one of those like aha moments. I
Hmm.
took a workshop from him.
Hmm.
It was like a 1-day workshop and I came home and went, oh, I can do this. This is what I am.
So
And
you
it
went
was,
into that workshop as one person and came out as
did.
another,
It
essentially.
truly
That's
did. Yeah. It's not
fascinating.
corny, but it's true.
Yeah. Judy, did you have any inspirations of that type, or was there a moment like Peg just talked about where you kind of had a transformative experience?
No, but I had a sort of coming out of the closet experience.
Say
So
more. Say more
everybody
about
knew
that.
it as logical, rational, scientific. And when I
Hmm.
started displaying my art, they were like, wait, who are you? So we'd meet for lunch. And previously, I always divvied up the check because I was good in math.
There you go.
Once I came out as an artist, people started saying, give me that. You can't do that. Same people.
Isn't that amazing? That's so funny. Um, and when you got to that sort of point, did it dawn on you that maybe the scientific part of you actually had some creativity at the base of it that could be translated into your current uh, kind of identity? Because I
Oh,
think that
clearly
science
there's,
does have a degree of creativity built into it. Of I understand the thing the right way. It's a journey for
clearly,
exploration and the discovery of the truth. I mean, isn't that what art is as well?
yes, there's a connection. Both of them are thinking out of the box. You've got a problem,
Correct.
whether it's an artistic problem or a scientific problem,
Mhm.
you get to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, there you go. What about this? What about how your journeys have been affected as creative producers in the fact that you're women in American society? What bearing, if any, do you think that that's had on the upside or the more challenging side in terms of how you've been interpreted, opportunities maybe that you've had or not had compared to male counterparts? Is that an issue for either of you? Peg, let me start with you.
Um, I mean, just as a woman in this country, or probably any place in the world, I mean, you're in a different spot than a man is. You're looked at in a different way.
Hmm.
I think that many women artists have to struggle to prove that they're serious. Um, and but I think that probably is in any field, and
Hmm.
not just in the artistic field.
Right. And Judy, would you concur with that or have an allied point of view? Or how do you
I,
understand that?
I've straddled both fields, and there's a fair amount of discrimination in both.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
would say it's probably less overt in art
Hmm.
and more covert, which is awkward because you can't deal with it.
Exactly. How would you say that, your identity as women has affected the content of your work or the message or the modalities in which you do your work, all of which are superb for different reasons, but has being a woman had a kind of a conscious impact on your practice as an artist? Peg, what would you say about that? Or is it just something that you don't really factor into your consideration?
Yeah, I don't think I factor it in. I mean, on me. I mean,
Hmm.
it's it's just this part of me. It's part of my identity, obviously. I can't
Mhm.
undo that.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know how I would separate out being a woman from anything else that would be a part of the context of my art.
Right. Yeah. That's just the authentic you.
It's
That's
just
what
me.
comes across. And I totally get that. And that's probably when art is at its best, when it's unfettered and unedited. What about you, Judy? How does it affect your body of work being a woman and having insights into some of the things you shared earlier?
I think the fact of discrimination made me be the artist I am, in that I am a woman and I'm going to express my point of view, and it's a woman's point of view because that's who I am. But
Hmm.
that's front and central.
Right.
So I usually describe it as woman-centered art.
I love that. And in a sense, that's what this show is. And in some sense, it's by intention. I do not want to overplay stereotypes, but I do think that in times of crisis and times of confusion, in my experience in the world, women are the ones who tend to have it most together, who sort of have it most right, and who are the ones that help us rebuild and the ones that guide us and lead us in the times of greatest trouble. And that's probably unfortunate that women are put in that position. But in that context, I think art can be part of the solution. And I wonder if in this moment, with so much loss and so much anxiety affecting our society and our times, if you feel any particular responsibility to use your art as a tool to be part of the solution, to be part of the healing or part of the understanding that has to happen, having gone through something like what we're in the middle of right now. Is that something that's on your mind or not so much so? Judy, how do you
Well,
feel about that?
It's definitely on my mind, but I haven't figured out how to address it. I think that when we have more distance and can look back on it, I'll be able to see how I could have responded. But right now,
Hmm.
my usual ways of dealing with things are gone.
Yeah.
We
Is
don't
it?
have a community of artists to like bat ideas around. Everything has to be either written down or a
Mhm.
Zoom meeting, fairly certainly more formal than sitting around drinking, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah. And that's one of the dilemmas, I think, for artists who are naturally social animals who feed off of each other's work. It's really difficult in a time like this to not have that direct contact that we're so accustomed to. How would you answer the question, Peg? I mean,
I think it's the same thing. This whole situation is totally overwhelming. And one of the things, kind of like what you just said, is we're missing our social gatherings. The
hmm,
idea of being able to kick ideas around,
yeah,
face to face, not with Zoom, not with texting or
right,
whatever, but
right,
like
right.
in person.
Yeah. Which,
And I mean, I would love to, be part of a solution, but I don't know what kind of a direction that would take.
yeah. So we're still kind of inventing as we go and trying to figure out what is the appropriate response in the work. Peg, I know that your work has been revered in our region for some time now and kind of referred to in the local media as pithy, catchy, and sometimes outrageous, which I think personally, I find very fair remarks about your remarkable body of work. Is that a fair description in your mind? And tell us a little bit more about what it is you're trying to do with your most recent works in relationship to all the issues we've been covering so far.
Well, actually, what I'm working on right now is an enormous stitchery for a show called Stitch Fetish, which is all sexy art,
Wow,
which certainly cheers me up. So I
very
can do
good.
things like, look on the internet for naked men because that's what I'm stitching right now.
How
So
interesting.
that's uplifting.
That's really great. And in terms of the works that you're going to be showing in
No
June at
naked men.
studios, in June at studios, when you're showing the body that you shared with us, how would you describe that particular collection, and what would you want people to be paying particular attention to as they look at the body of work in the
I
exhibit?
think I think the pieces I chose, they're kind of introspective. They kind of have a feeling of aloneness, not loneliness, but separation. Which one, when you asked me to be in the show, it was like I go, well, I haven't done anything for
Of
COVID,
course, of course.
um, but then looking at those pieces, went, yeah, this makes sense.
I agree. They're very evocative pieces for the moment.
Thank you.
for just the reasons you talked about. And they're beautifully executed. And as I said, we'll be projecting some of those images when this interview is aired for audiences. And I'm sure that they'll be very appreciative and it'll serve as a teaser for them to want more.
Yeah.
Judy, tell me a little bit about how you describe your work. I know you principally, as many people do, for what you call carved cardboard works, but you're a multimedia artist and have a long history producing many works, and you have remarkable sketchbooks too. I visited your studio and have seen them firsthand, and they are works of art in their own right. So tell us a little bit about how you like to describe your work, and tell us a little bit about what you're offering up for the show in June.
Well, I've had a long time interest in otherness, and you don't want to get into any stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
It's too easy to make them people like a different race or a different
Correct.
gender or disabled. All of that easily becomes offensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I've started creating fantasy creatures that are in some sense set apart from regular people. And how do they deal with it? How do they deal with the other people?
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorites is a small child that has dinosaur scales, and he's surrounded by a hostile crowd, and we see him from the back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what would it feel like to be that child? You can't help that you're born that way.
Correct. Yeah, those, I mean, the images are very powerful and really, I think, evocative as well, the way that I described Peg's work. You have history back east. I think you were born in St. Louis, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, but came to California early and have a deep history in the Oakland Bay Area milieu of creativity and art, which is a hotbed. Tell us a little bit about how that journey affected your decision to come to a place like Paso Robles. It's not a, I'm going to ask Peg that question as well. She came from New York City, so she had an even longer journey. But tell us about how you got here and what it means. Well, how should we understand and interpret that?
Well, I think part of it was, as I said, coming out as an artist. If you live in suburbia, it's hard to be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So once I was done with my domestic duties, the kids had left the nest, I moved to an artist loft in Oakland, downtown Oakland, and people started taking me seriously. You can even play with them. You can say, they meet you and they say, where are you from? Oh, I'm from suburban Half Moon Bay. Next. Oh, I live in a loft in Oakland. Oh, really? Tell me about it.
Right.
So
Isn't
I
that
lived there.
fascinating? How that affects perspective and perception about who
It
you are and how
does.
valuable your work is.
So I put my all into it for 15 years. As you said, the Bay Area is a hotbed,
Yeah.
but I'm a small fish in a big pond. And after a while, I got tired of that.
Yeah.
It's an expensive area to live.
Sure is.
Time to go.
Yeah. Well, you did. We're grateful that you did. You did a good thing as far as we're concerned. And Peg, your journey was a long one. You kind of came out here back in the day, in what was it, the 60s or the early 70s, as a young woman?
It was the mid 70s. Well, yeah, I came out in the mid 70s and went to Los Angeles and lived there for quite a while, and hooked up with my partner, and we've been all over California, up to Carmel, and then down here, and just become a Californian. It's been a long
You
time.
are, yeah, you're a quintessential California now, and your partner, Don Lamson, a very talented musician and songwriter, is also renowned in these parts as a cultural icon. I know that, you know, you've had opportunities to show all over the country, both of you. Peg, I think you've been showing most recently at Bergamot Station in Santa Monica. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Judy, are you showing in other venues as well currently?
No, as we noted, I just moved here, so I'm kind of getting my feet firmly on the ground
Understandably.
as to where I am.
Understandably, but your works, I think your respective websites, which we'll put up on this broadcast, are well worth our viewers checking out in depth. You're remarkably talented people. I just want to say another very quick word before we sign off, and that is that June is going to be a very momentous opportunity for folks to see your show. We're hoping to greet them, even though we may have social distancing and other restrictions, but the show will run throughout the month of June 2020, and it's at Studios on the Park in beautiful downtown Paso Robles. You're both going to be people that we're going to want to do more work with and have more conversation with in the future. But let me give you each a final 30 seconds to just say a final thought about your show pieces and your opportunities to partner with Studios on the Park and the broader public. Peg, let me give you the last word, and then we'll go to Judy.
Well, I was one of the beginning members of Studios on the Park, so it's kind of like I've come full circle, and I'm certainly happy to be in the first show that's available after all this catastrophe going on, and delighted to be with the three other fabulous artists. What a great way to do it.
We're really thrilled to have you, and thank you so much for your talent and your generosity, Peg. Judy, you get the final thought.
Yep, I'm on the opposite end since I'm new. It's intriguing to meet new people, and they have different takes on my work than perhaps the Bay Area audience did. I really am enjoying that and looking forward to it. I hope we can see each other, not like this.
There will be some precautions taken, but let's hope that we can get out of the woods sooner than later, and with your help, find our way back into a degree of normalcy and beautiful art, thoughtful art in difficult times. Thank you so much, Peg Grady, Judy Johnson-Williams, two icons in our creative universe here. Until next time, Henry Ramos at Studios on the Park. Stay tuned. More news at 11 as always. See ya.